Hey guys, this is Crab Hunter, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Woo! Now today we're going to be having a look at the Panzer Stuer Emil, or to quote its designation, Panzer Schlüssel 5. Now let's go to the vehicle description just to show why it's called Stuer Emil. Experimental tank destroyer developed on the basis of the VK-3001H. Only 2 vehicles were manufactured. They fought on the Eastern Front. The destroyer was designated Stuer Emil, which was German for Stubborn Emil, due to frequent breakdowns. She is Tier 7 on the German glass cannon line. She comes after the Nashorn, and obviously comes before the Borsig. And she... okay, well, before I go on, everything that I state in this review is of my opinion. It doesn't mean it's fact. It doesn't mean I'm trying to say I'm a pro World of Tanks player. I'm not going to try and influence your decision over this at all. But this vehicle, for me, kind of sucks. Well, okay, no, this is what I'm going to call an interesting one, because she doesn't suck bad enough, like some tanks I know, to make me hate it. But she sucks just enough for me not to enjoy it. You know, the RNG on this... I mean, to be honest with you, after having so much fun with such things as... if we just go... click here and click here. With such things as the Nashorn, you've got great gun, you've got good mobility, you've got loads of things playing to you, and she is a lot of fun to drive. She was a lot of fun to drive. And you know, you can have so much fun with this thing. Even in tier 7 and 8 games, you can still do a fairly good job. With this thing, not so much. There are a number of factors which, for me, cripple this vehicle and force me to do things which normally I don't do. Normally, no, I wouldn't recommend. But, you know, like I said, it's not so bad that I would hate this thing, but it's bad enough for me not to like this thing. But anyway, enough of me talking in riddles. Let's get this review started. Hit points. You have 850. This is the same as the Jagdpanther. Now, if you've seen my Jagdpanther review, you no doubt know what comparisons you have in comparison to your tier 7 counterparts. But for those of you who haven't, don't worry, I will do so again. So, the AC-46 for the French tech tree has 820. So you're better than them by about 30. Let's go down to Britain. Britain has the AT-7, which does have a shit ton of health. 1,250. But one thing that the British tank destroyers here have is very easy to find weaknesses. So it's kind of vice versa case for them. The T-25AT for the Americans, the non-turreted one, has 840, so you're 10 better than them. For the T-25-2, I believe it is better than you by a few hit points. Or not as good. I don't know, to be honest with you. I can't quite remember. The hit points it has here at the moment would suggest not, but probably... I believe it might have the same as the SU-152, which we'll go down to. So it might be slightly better than you by about, like, maybe 10 or 20 hit points. So the Americans are better than you. Well, one is Americans better than you. The other one isn't. Speaking of Russia, the SU-152 has 870 hit points. So 20 better than you. And the SU-100M1 has 830. So you're better than them by 20. So pretty much like the Jagdpanther, you are in a very strong position when it comes to hit points. You're not obviously... obviously, as I said, I don't recommend you use these hit points, especially not in this vehicle. But you do kind of have that slightly... well, obviously not with this vehicle, but hit points-wise, you are given a fair amount more than the usual stuff, which is pretty cool. You're not completely dominating with hit points, but at the same time, you've got a nice average set to work with. So that is, if you were worried about what kind of hit points you would have on the Nashorn, you have the same as the Jagdpanther. So pretty useful advantage there. So now on to weight and speed. For weight, you weigh 37.5 tons with 3 equipment modules attached, and you have a maximum tonnage limit of 38.5. Now that doesn't seem too heavy by some standards, but unfortunately, this is where, and I hate to sound very negative off the first beat, but this is where you start running into problems with this vehicle. You only have a 310 horsepower engine, which gives you only 25 kilometers per hour speed limit. Ah. You have 34 traverse speed for what it helps, but your acceleration is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. In fact, it's so bad, at least for me, that I had to forego my usual consumables venture and get one of these, which is basically if you go to here, you actually have two choices of consumables. You either get the premium high-octane gasoline, which actually works beautifully, but it costs 10,000 or 20,000 credits apiece, or you get this, which costs 5,000, so it's more expensive than a fire extinguisher. So you have to add, but for me, that is the only thing I feel I can use this for. So yeah, this just adds that extra oomph to the engine, which actually helps this tank out a lot. I will be honest with you, getting that does help. It doesn't do it perfectly because you're still very slow, but you will find yourself getting to the 25 kilometer per hour speed limit a little faster and potentially going 26. But this thing is a very slow tank, which means the tactics you'll have to utilize with this vehicle are as such. Don't charge. Don't just find the best place to hold off and plan your route, really. Like the British tank destroyers, you'll have to seriously consider what map you're on and where you can go in order to utilize this vehicle to its maximum effectiveness. Because otherwise, you're just going to find yourself being on one side of the flank and the enemy team being on the other, and by the time you get there, either your team is dead and you're dead, or your team's killed the enemy and you've got no points to share for it. So yeah, a very much disadvantage for this vehicle. I mean, for me, I hate slow vehicles now. It sounds really harsh, but for me, I really find it difficult to like a vehicle that is slow. That hasn't got some other massive advantage to it, which we will go further on in the video. But yeah, so very much low speed for this vehicle. Hey guys, and we are on Tank Inspector. We're actually on a new version of Tank Inspector as well, which is pretty darn awesome. It's going to actually show a feature which I didn't realize when I was recording previously that it had, but I'll talk to you about it earlier. Anyway, let's get on to the armor values. So, this is the Stuer Emil, and this is the armor values of the Stuer Emil. Now, don't be fooled, the armor on this is crap. It's still very crap, regardless of what the color says. If we just follow the if we follow what the stats say, this is the 50mm worth of armor at the front. As you can see, it pretty much covers what it says it does on the front. As the vehicle is nearly completely flat at most areas, there is just no angling whatsoever. So you'll have 50, maybe 51 millimeters at the front. But in all essence, if you shoot the front of this thing with an SU-152 or even a KV-2, you will penetrate and kill him. It also the 50 millimeters also extends to the little driver's hatch there, which kind of looks a bit like a very small R2-D2 of the Stuer Emil, but it's very weakly armored indeed. Going down towards the 30 millimeters, you will undeniably note that the side and rear of the hull is 30 millimeters. The little quirky thing is that the R2-D2 has 30 millimeters on the side as well, but apart from that, there is and there's also a lovely little hole there to shoot through, just through there. Obviously you've got the tracks, which to combined give you 55 millimeters worth of armor, maybe even 80 millimeters on that area. You might have something like a little bit more, but generally speaking, won't really stop anything from going through, especially not at tier 7. You may have a rare occurrence where it shoots through you and damages your treads, but that is very unlikely, and it very rarely happens. So the hull armor, oh, wrong one. But the hull armor, the 30 millimeters on the hull and the rear don't, no, nothing at all. Well, only on the hull. For the shield, you have 20 millimeters to the side. So obviously, be extremely careful. Well, be extremely careful when you're driving this thing, because if anyone gets this is a bit like the T1 Heavy. There's nothing more glorious than seeing the side of Stuer Emil, because it's such a big target. I don't even need to do guides on this, really. It's just, you see it, you shoot it, you pen it, which is quite nasty. The 15 millimeters worth of hull armor is actually at the rear as well, so even less armor there, which is just pathetic. It's terrible. It's just, oh, look, the rear of. I'll tell you, if you get a shot there, I'm going to give you cookies for that. That's impressive. And finally, the 10 millimeters is just within the set plate itself. So, you know, yeah, it's just absolutely terrible. Don't even bother. And then finally, you've got the gun itself is completely armored. The intriguing thing about this vehicle, however, is that you've got a number of spaced armor on the gun mantlet and the gun itself. While it doesn't really offer too much in the sense of armor, oh, what the buggo hell was that? I just saw. Huh. Okay, that's either like a 1 in a million shot, or just weird. Anyway, so yeah, the most armor that you'll have on this vehicle will be a combination of your gun and your turret mantlet, which is relatively decently armored at 50 millimeters. Unfortunately, it doesn't go. It doesn't actually, no, it does. It does use the hull armor, but it's unlikely. Like I said, anything, you're not going to avoid a shot on this vehicle, which is a depressing factor. So yeah, obviously pointless me saying which areas to go for, but for those who really want to for those who aren't driving an SU-152 or anything that can do a severe amount of damage to this vehicle quickly, a good area to aim at, of course, would be under glaciers. This operates like many German tanks in the sense that it will, when you shoot the underside, could easily cause the transmission of the tank, basically the engine, to be damaged or knocked out. I have had my engine knocked out from under glacial shots before, like the Stug. You can also set a Stuer Emil on fire by doing this as well, so a good area to aim for in that. Generally speaking, the most of the time, you will see this part of the tank. Like I said before, you don't really need to worry too much about where to go. Just make sure that when you fire, you take cover, because although if you can't do super amounts of damage to them, they can still do a fair amount of damage to you should they be able to pen you. Or so should they shoot you. So be careful about that. But if you can, fire a shot, take cover, and just get around him. Now, one of the features of the Stuer Emil, which is absolutely ridiculously awesome, which is one of the bigger perks of this tank, which actually comes into effect, well, in one of my replays that I'll show you, is this feature. And this is a new thing on Tank Inspector, so do forgive if I'm just figuring out how. You can actually, this is so cool, you can actually lower the gun. And I'll just show you the gun depression on this thing. Is that it? Is that all you can do? There you go. Look at the gun depression on this tank. You are touching. You are virtually... This is how it will be. Look at that! Look at that. You are touching the ground, pretty much, with the end of your rifle barrel. Excuse me. That is absolutely ridiculous. So, although, yes, you have little to no armor and, you know, your likelihood of survival is much lowered if you are spotted, you can actually go... You can actually almost... You can hold down. I mean, I'm not saying that's what you should do, but you can crest over the top of a hill, fire, and get down, and expose as little of yourself as possible. That is one of the strongest features in this tank, and it is absolutely fantastic in that performance. It is brilliant because when you do that. That's why in open maps such as Sandy Rivers, even El Haluf, one of my worser maps, you can have so much fun because all you have to do in certain parts of the map is just go to the hill, crest over the top, fire, and come down. That is an awesome feature of this thing. So yeah, elevation, not so much. Not too good on that one. Oh, hello. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah, about there. So yeah, elevation is not so good, but considering the fact that you won't often be aiming up, but instead be aiming right down, that is immensely cool. I find that to be one of the cooler features. And I really like this Tank Inspector program. You get to see the gun depression. And also how much gun traverse you have as well. You have roughly like 5 degrees worth of gun traverse. So it's not perfect, but it does the job. That is so cool. I like this feature. But anyway, so yeah, the Stuer Emil, everyone. Very badly armored, but the gun depression is absolutely fantastic. Now, onto armor. Now, obviously, there is no armor on this vehicle. But what little there is, well, we'll tell you. 50 at the front, 30 to the sides, 30 to the rear. Probably the most armoured part of your tank is probably the tracks. Knowing that. Weirdly enough, I've had a couple of occasions where the tracks have actually taken the hit for me, but that's rare. You will not bounce anything in this vehicle. You'll have to be exceptionally careful when facing off against Tier 7 tank destroyers such as the Su-152. Any derp gunners, to be honest with you, you have to fear, you know, which is quite worrying. But how much or how little armor do you have? Well, let's find out in the Tank Inspector program. Now that we've gone through the armor, let's have a little look at the view range and the signal range. For view range, as you are an open-topped vehicle, you do gain an extra benefit of view range. And this one is very good benefit, being 400 meters worth of view range. That's bloody fantastic. For a Tier 7 tank destroyer as well, that's very good. Very good indeed. I'm going to query something. Are you the only open-topped vehicle? Because most of the other tanks out there are closed-topped. So the AC-46 is closed-top. The Jagdpanther is closed-topped. Definitely the 87 is closed-topped. The T25AT is closed-top. Now, the T25/2, I'm not entirely sure is closed-topped. But it seems to be with the way that that turret is designed, which is that one. So it might be a case that that one is open-topped before and closed-topped afterwards. It seems that way. So I will kind of say that this is a closed-topped vehicle. So, and if you were curious about it, I'll just show it there. 380, so you're better than them by 20 meters. And the Russians are certainly closed-topped as well, which means that you are the only Tier 7 open-topped vehicle in the tank destroyer line, which is pretty impressive for that one. When compared to your counterparts being the only open-topped vehicle there, is certainly, for at least view range, an advantage when it comes to it. Obviously, as we've said before in the armor, not so much for that, but certainly useful when it comes to spotting them before they spot you. So, yeah, don't even need to worry about comparing them for once. Huzzah! Going on to signal range, you have 700. While this is very good, it's not the FUG 12. Now, I'm not too sure why that is, but, you know, unfortunately, you have to deal with it. I mean, personal preference, I prefer the FUG 12, because it gives you an extra 10 meters worth of radio range. But, you know, it's not a big loss, bit of 10. But let's have a little comparison with your Tier 7 counterparts to see how you fare. Let's start off with the French. The French get access to a Tier 10 radio, which gives them 750 signal range. So they are better than you in that regards by quite a bit. Your Jagdpanther counterpart gets the FUG 12, which gives them 10 meter radio range over, or 10 meters worth of radio range over you, which isn't too good. The AT7 from Britain has a Tier 8 radio, which gives them 700 signal range as well. So you're as good as the British, and the British as good as you. The Americana has a Tier 9 radio, but it only gives them 615 signal range, so not too good for them. Not too good for them at all. Same goes for the T-25AT as well, so oh dear. What about Nepal Ruski? Well, the Russians surprisingly come back at you with 625 radio range. Not as good as you, but still a surprising amount for the Su-152. And the Su-100M1 is pretty much buggered with 525. So, yeah. Once again, like your hit points with regards to the Jagdpanther, you actually, for signal range, you obviously, I mean, unfortunately there is a clear advantage by the French, but at the same time, you're not at the complete low where the Russians are, and you are actually on top with radio range with regarding to your tier 7 counterparts. So you know you're on the upper half of the average line, which is pretty handy. Certainly handy when it comes to keeping a track of where the enemies are, and when used in conjunction with the view range, certainly will help when it comes to identifying and killing as many heavies before they spot you. Now, onto my... Well, actually, this isn't my favourite part of the review. Shock. This is the first time I've actually said this on World of Tanks. And before I go on, I'm just going to state that what I say is my opinion and to my experience. You guys may have had it differently. And certainly this does not mean, by me telling you of what I've had to deal with this vehicle, that you shouldn't go for it. Because, for example, Rexasaur, if he's watching this, still don't know why you like this thing. But no, he absolutely adores the Stuer Emil. He's made a number of videos showing his love for it. And he's had some very good matches with this thing. For me, I don't understand it. But, like I said, his playstyle, different to mine. You never know. So yeah, the gun. Now, with the Stuer Emil, you don't get the guns that you researched on the Nashorn. Instead, for the stock weapon, you get this. The 105 Cannoneer 18. It's a 105mm, 7.5 rate of fire, 169 pen, which is only 6mm less than the top pen of an IS tank, so it's certainly not bad. 300 on average damage, 0.36 accuracy, and 2.3 second aiming time. That's a very good stock gun, you know? You feel the pinch when you're in a tier 8 and 9 game, but for some matches, I'd say most matches, you do alright, you know? You'll get by. It's certainly crippling at points, but it's not that bad. After spending an extortionate amount of research points, like I think near 50,000, over 50,000 research points on that tank, which took me a while, you get this gun. 128mm Cannoneer 40. Obviously, if you're looking at the stats, you'll probably be drooling at the mouth. You'll be going, "Oh my god! Oh, this looks really good," you know? And it is. 128mm, 4.5 rate of fire, 231 pen on average, and 490 damage? Holy shit! This must be the second most high alpha damage tank in tier 7 tank destroyer. Shit! That's really good. And 0.36 accuracy, same as the first, with a 2.5 aiming time. Oh my god! Haha! You know, you must feel like a king, Crap Hunter, with that gun. Not so much. It is a fantastic weapon. But, and I'm going to have to say but here. And once again, experience, my opinion, blah, 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 blah. There are two factors of this weapon that, in my opinion, make me not like this tank enough to say that it's a great, fantastic piece of equipment, but at the same time, still, you know, doesn't make me hate it. You know, it's one of those in-betweeners, you know? Almost a bit like the Jagdpanzer 4, to my previous experience of the thing, you know? Obviously at a different kind of scale, but still. And the thing about it is that because you've got very bad speed, very low speed, which for me is a major turn-off, and a very much lack of armor, you would look to the gun to try and balance out the issues. And this gun, stats-wise, would do so. But there are two things that one of which everyone has to deal with. And, you know, that's it. You know, that is what you have to deal with. Everyone has that problem. And the second one either makes that first problem really, really crippling, or lessens the blow and it's not so bad. I'll talk to you guys about the first thing. The ammunition. With this gun, you only get 15 rounds at all. That's it. 15 rounds. So logistically speaking, you would be able to shoot once at every opponent on the enemy team. Yeah, that isn't good, is it? Cool. Yeah, I know I'm not the best World of Tanks player out there, but even, you know, I don't feel that's very good. For a tank destroyer to have low ammunition, that's not very good. That's the kind of thing you'd see an artillery scumbag have. Like having a 200mm gun or something. So for a tier 7 tank destroyer with very low armor to have only 15 shots? Yeah, not so good. And that's one of the bigger turn-off. That's the bigger turn-off. And to be honest with you, it's not a crippling problem, you know? You just have to... it just adapts your tactics. You have to be careful with it. You have to make sure that you don't go guns blazing. So, you know, you just have to appreciate what you've got. That's understandable. You know, it's not a major problem, but it is a big problem. Because then, now, you've got to think, right, I don't have enough shots to go crazy. So I have to seriously think about which tanks I prioritize shooting at, and also which tanks I know I can pen and I can do damage with, you know? Because if you're trying to go for I mean, sometimes if you get that lovely flank shot on a higher tier tank, brilliant, you know? And also you got to hope that you don't get low damage rolls, which then kind of talks into the second problem. And this problem is quite evident in... at least when I've played this tank, in quite a lot of games. And in the 2 replays I'm going to show you, hopefully you'll see this problem come up. The second big problem, which really makes me loathe this machine for a few minutes, is the RNG you have. It trolls you so hard. It trolls you more than an SU-152. You get the game with the SU-152. You get the games where you fire a shot off, and for some reason the shot goes magically into the distance, hitting nothing. But at least with the SU-152, you don't feel that, you know, that you can just do you can do like over 200 to 300 damage on any vehicle that you hit because you're using high explosive. With this, you have to hit to do damage. You have to hit and penetrate to do damage, you know? And this gun has some terrible RNG moments. I have had a consistently bad RNG moments with this gun. But the weird thing about this gun is as one match, you can have absolutely terrible results. You only hit once on your opposing vehicle and it's a low damage roll. Or you can spend most of the game wasting shots that either should have hit but go low or go high or don't penetrate or only hit the tracks. But then at the same time, you can have a game in which everything goes well for you. You know, you go into the combat, you shoot, you penetrate, you do high damage rolls, you get a shit ton of experience and credits because you've done over 3k damage. It's that kind of troll that this gun has, and that's why, in my opinion, I don't like this vehicle enough probably to keep and think that it's a good vehicle. Because it's not. It's so unpredictable. And it also is very map orientated, you know? I know most open-topped vehicles are like, ah, shit, I'm not in the, you know, I can't utilize my... You know, they suffer in towns and cities. But at least with some of them, you can work with. The Nashorn, I can work with in towns. The freaking SU, you know, the Nashorn can work in towns. Even the freaking flak bus you can work in towns, but not this. This is very difficult to work with, for me at least, in towns. You know, I didn't really often play this thing enough to have enough town games, but in the open, you have a much better chance of doing stuff with this tank. But that RNG is always present, and for me, don't know why, I just get trolled by it, and it's so frustrating to have that. So yeah, one of the most frustrating aspects of this vehicle is the thing that you use to kill people with. One of the good benefits to try and keep this thing positive is the depression that you get on this gun is absolutely ridiculous. And one of my replays that I will show you, it highlights this completely. It highlights this perfectly. And if I haven't already mentioned it in the armor side of this review, you'll see it in the replay system. So this thing does have its benefits. It undeniably has its benefits, but it's still very trollish. Right, now that we've spoken the controversial words, let's get to the equipment and crew skills. This is basically where I tell you which kind of equipment I would recommend for this vehicle to be used at its maximum effectiveness. For your equipment, I would recommend, first of all, getting a large caliber gun rammer and an enhanced gun laying drive. Just regardless, go for those. You need it. The third option is, as usual, is always up to you, but here's what I would recommend. Number one recommendation. For me, I find a binocular telescope to be a really useful add-on, because this basically adds an extra, I don't know the mathematical side of it, but it adds an extra 25% view range for a stationary vehicle. So up to 500 meters. This thing, and especially because you're an open-topped vehicle, this thing really benefits from having binos on the top, and it has certainly benefited me in most forms of combat. The number two recommended, the second recommended thing you get is a camo net, because this thing is very badly armored, and many people with high explosive love these things love to shoot at them. I'm one of them. Being able to be hidden for as long as humanly possible is a very good idea. Being able to hide yourself is certainly, to be honest with you, with a glass cannon line, you're probably used to that tactic of just don't be seen. And hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll still remember this tactic when upon getting the camouflage net. The third thing I would recommend, and it's kind of almost as good as second, but to a degree, well, the third thing I would recommend would be the heavy spore liner. This basically protects your crew from and armor, of course, from ramming and explosions. Now, of course, I can't guarantee that it will completely save you, because most of the time, if high explosive shells penetrate you, more often than not, they will kill you outright. The SU-152, for example, with a derp gun, most of the time when I've penetrated these things, I've killed them. You know, it's unlikely that you will survive a penetration from an SU-152 shell, but if you get a large caliber, if you get a heavy spore liner, this may certainly protect you from artillery or maybe a splash damage shot from an SU-152. Now, for some people out there saying, "Oh, but surely that's better, more important than a camouflage net." Well, technically, if you're thinking that's better than that, then you're using this tank wrong, because you have to hide from your opponents, not get shot at. That said, I probably can't say too much because I'm always hyper aggressive. But still, that would be so those are my recommendations. Either for first recommendation, binos, second, camo, third, heavy spore liner. Everything else, not really necessary. Except for those two, but those two you've already said about. Going on to crew skills, now I've kind of chosen the wrong ones, so ignore what I've done, but what I would recommend your crew do is camo, camo, camo. In fact, oh, hello, not looking too good. I'll sort that out later. Camo, camo, camo. All of your crew, save your driver, you use camouflage on. I think I might have taken it from other tanks for that one, but still, get your crew some camouflage on there as their first skill, And then when your commander has got 100% on that, and you've got trained another skill in 40% afterwards, get yourself Sixth Sense. To be able to know when you've been spotted in this thing is probably will be a lifesaver. I've yet to have it, but, you know, any kind of open-topped vehicle, it's a lifesaver. So make sure to have that on your crew. The second thing I would recommend your gunner to have, well, the thing I'd recommend your gunner to have is, when he hits 100% on that, is to swap that out for Deadeye using the same system as I've said before. This will really help because it will cause extra damage to your enemy vehicle modules and crew. Though that said, it would pay to have an already experienced crew on this, so that way it doesn't take as long. Or you can focus more on the camo on this thing. Apart from that, do the same procedure again with camo. Get designated target, because that means you can spot your opponent for a few more seconds, giving you or your team a chance to get away and get away, giving your team a chance to kill him. For your driver, he would be the only person I wouldn't recommend having the camouflage skill, but instead having clutch braking. This guy is going to be the most important guy apart from your gunner, this guy is the most important guy in your tank, because he's going to dictate how effective you're going to be in combat, especially with regards to your shit. Even if you're not using that, at least, or if you are using that, he will help out. So clutch braking, #1 recommendation. Second, off-road driving. You need that. Though you either get that first or that first. I find I can't go without this first, so I'll get that and then I'll get that. But you definitely need these two skills, and their usefulness outweighs having camo. So get those two skills first, after which then you can get some camouflage as an extra skill. But more importantly, get your mobility up and your capabilities to turn up. Going to the radio operator, once again, camouflage, but if you really want to have any extra skills to have with it, maybe call for vengeance, or perhaps signal boosting. Probably more important to get signal boosting, because that way then you can improve your signal range from 700 to maybe 710, so you might be even more useful, or as useful as a FUG 12. And for your loader, you will want to give him camouflage, obviously, then train him up in another skill. Then, you know what? I would actually say ignore safe stowage, because your ammunition, while you can get ammo racked and you can have problems when it comes to that, the amount of health or the amount of armor that you've got, if you've been spotted, I would say it would be a good idea instead to have Adrenaline Rush, because that accelerates your reload rate, which could possibly save you from getting killed if you are in that clutch moment, and if you have been hit by artillery and you have a spore liner. So, you know, either or. So, that's all the talking side of this review done. Let's get to the action. See you in the replays, guys.
With Rexasaur and his Stuer Emil, and this is when I had my Stuer Emil at full upgrade. So, one of the things you'll automatically notice almost instantly after you start the game is how, well, admittedly on this one, you can see the low top speed of the vehicle. I'm getting roughly like, well, unfortunately this is in this video I think it was like prior, like patch 8.10 perhaps, I'm not too sure. But even with the 100 octane gasoline, the Stuer Emil is a very slow vehicle to work with. I mean, obviously there are slower vehicles out there, but it's only going this fast because it has the octane gas. So as such, both Rexasaur and I had elected to just go up to this position where the KV2 and the other TDs and Scout were, and just hold that ridge for a while. Yes, it's camping, but look, this is a TD, it does the job. Unfortunately, slightly disturbed E25 platoon in the enemy team, kind of not entirely sure why they do stuff like that. Either they're trolls or they actually are mad. So at this point, the Panther 2 and the Hellcat have pretty much got that side of the ridge covered. So at this point, we've decided to, both Rexasaur and I decided to push up and move towards this flank. Now, I was a little bit edgy on going forward to this thing, because obviously enemy artillery was in play when a Type 59 appears, takes a shot, knocks out our tank. Luckily, I get a nice high damage roll into the side of him as he withdraws, which is when an enemy AMX 5100 appears. Rexasaur gets a nice shot into him. I move up just as I've reloaded to just say goodbye to this chassis of the AMX 5100.
by which point an enemy KV-3 appears, but unfortunately we didn't get the shot in on the KV-3, so yeah, unfortunately we could have an even shot again. So at this point I'm very edgy going forward, because as I said, artillery is in play, and both of the artillery have massive guns, so all it would take is a sprayer shot on us. When we spot an enemy T-150 and both of our shots miss, despite being perfectly aimed and everything, and not even going good. I have no idea how we missed that, but we missed. But never mind, AMX 5100 is charging up the line. I get a very nice shot, bang, right into the turret of the tank. Rexasaur tries to do the same, but unfortunately it goes into the building, the controlness of the shot. Enemy 5100 comes along. When an enemy Hellcat appears, I react very slowly. I reacted a bit too flustered with that. One thing I want to point out before we go into any more, the Stuer Emil's, one of the difficulties, even though that the gun depression on this thing is amazing, one of the things that you might come into having issues with is when you're going over the top of a ridge or going below a ridge, to use the amazing gun depression that this thing has, the enemy forces who are there will be able to see your tank more before that you can shoot them. So when you do go over the top, do be aware of that line there, because more often than not you will probably be shot before you get your ability to shoot back. So be aware of that sort of line. So anyway, enemy Hellcat moves into position. Rexasaur moves into position, trying to get a shot on the Hellcat. And a bit of a quiet moment for a few moments. And then an enemy Tiger 2 comes along. Rexasaur takes another shot, unfortunately goes down and wide. My shot actually goes straight into the cupola, but doesn't penetrate, which is really annoying. So as you can see, the gun does troll you quite nasty at points, and it really can be frustrating, especially in a situation like this. Enemy AMX 5100 pops along, and as you can see there, I take a shot. We just pause. I take a shot. Yeah, as you can see, right onto the upper gun mounter, and I couldn't see him until after he had taken his shot. So be aware of stuff like that. So I take a nice shot into the AMX 5100, doing everything but 10 damage to him, but Rexasaur quickly remedies that situation and kills the 5100. By this point of the game, it was looking pretty bad. Even though we were winning more, even though we had more kills than they did, Clutch Shot missed out there. It was looking like they were going to overrun our positions pretty nastily and pretty quickly. So the enemy MT-25 appears. Rexasaur gets a nice high damage roll into that. I'm kind of preoccupied by this MT-25, as I really don't want to be outflanked by this guy. I'm getting really frustrated, because it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, I don't know which direction to go on. And I go, fuck you, shoot the MT-25. So now he's no longer a problem. An enemy Hellcat, and unfortunately Rexasaur takes some nasty hits. So an enemy Hellcat and a Tiger is now what stands between us and the forces. Though that said, the Jagdpanther 2, who was having a fantastic game, was outflanking the heavy. So all we had to do was just keep these guys in check. Rexasaur pushes up a little too quickly, takes the chance. I shoot. Unfortunately, the shell goes just over the top, and unfortunately, I get damaged and nearly die. Towards that. Enemy Tiger 2 comes along, tries to get out. Artillery has a go at him. Luckily, the Hellcat on our team knocks him, and the Tiger 2 decides to try and fall back. But at this point, Jagdpanther 2 gets the kill and secures it, and the whole game is now completely changed. So I'm quite relieved that I'm still alive at this point. So then the enemy Type 59, who I shot earlier, tries to sneak up for an artillery kill. Hellcat gets a nice shot into the enemy Type 59, whereupon our disturbed E25 player kills, starts typing, makes the mistake, bang, and he's dead. So I move into position, thinking that the enemy team is completely there. I get him back, and I have a little bit of fun. I do a little bit of a ha-ha, got you typing moment. So then at this point, we spot the T-32. I snap round to try and get a shot in on the T-32. I move into position, trying to see if I can get a side shot, doing anything. Take your time, aim, 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 aim. Shoots it, bang! I get a nice high damage roll into the T-32, which then artillery sorts out.
and finishes him off. So that was a pretty damn good game on that one. Very clutch, of course, with some of the shots. I'm very fortunate I didn't get too many high damage rolls. I do say well done to the enemy team because they did provide such a good challenge for us. I nudge. I do a nudge on Rexus saying, "No, I've lost my friend." Out of sadness. At this point, we're trying to be extra careful, but then the enemy E25 shoots the Gewehr Tiger. Gewehr Tiger. What is it? Oh, of course, yeah. The enemy E25 rams the Gewehr Tiger, killing himself but taking an enemy tank with him. So I guess kudos to him, I suppose. Bit of a stupid act, but you never know. Anyway, so yeah, that's one for the replay. I will see you in the next replay. And so we are back for the last replay of the video, and this one is in El Huluf. I am in a tier 8 game, and it's on encounter mode. Oh joy! But we're on the south side, which I do like. So yeah, this is where the Top Gun really does kind of help, as when it comes to facing off against the tier 8 guys. This is probably at the best of its limits, I suppose. I mean, obviously it does more. It can do more in tier 9 games, but this is probably what it was kind of designed for, if you know what I mean. So a fair amount of our team decides to go camp out on the southern ridge. I always prefer to move down north towards the cap area, so at least I can do something to help try and influence the game. Trying to get down the speed, trying to get down as fast as possible to the cap zone. RT-3485 makes a mad dash for the cap zone. I'm trying to get down to my usual spot, or a spot I go to a degree, to try and get shots in. Hopefully this won't be so popular that people will follow and copy tactic. Nah, it's alright. So yeah, we move into position. Enemy Hellcat is denied capture points. I'm just determined to try and get into position as fast as humanly possible. So yeah, going 25 kilometers per hour. Good God. I was going 26 at one point. It's crazy. So this is when I kind of get slightly stuck on the side of the hill. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, you slow bastard. Even with the octane gas, which is frustrating. So this is where I would also state that this is probably the best scenario for the tank, because you've got bushes ahead of you, so you can be blocked. You can't worry about seeing people. I get a very nice high damage roll into the ISU 152, and the ISU gets completely blitzed by the Ruhmetall Borsig. So at this point, the enemy T-32 shows up. VK 3001P shows up. I fire a clutch shot. I take care of the VK 3001P. So I take cover whilst reloading. It's always a good idea to try and just hide yourself as best as possible, even if it means just hiding till you've reloaded, because generally that gives you enough time to be de-spotted and then moving up into perimeter. So I tell the T-3485 and any other TDs around just to wait to let them come, as the T-34 is capping and it is looking pretty good for our team at this point. We've knocked out 3 tanks. Unfortunately, they've knocked out 3 tanks as well, but I'm kind of like sort of deciding on whether to move up to try and get shots in. I'm keeping my eyes peeled, because like I said, with this thing, I just don't feel confident with it some days. Like, there was artillery in play. I'm keeping my eyes peeled to the right because it wasn't looking too good. We're being outflanked, and it's just, you know, those moments where you think, oh, for God's sake. You know, you're sighing, you're getting a bit frustrated. It's just like, come on, team, you can spot them, you can do something with them, but it's just not looking good. But we're still capping, so hopefully, fingers crossed, if our team can salvage the situation. I try to move up to see if I can get any kind of shots on the south side, but unfortunately, we're taking heavy fire. The Ruhmetall Borsig really should have taken a fire extinguisher, but didn't. No, I don't know why no one ever does that, but it will. So I try and get a shot in on stuff, but there's just too many hills, not in the right position. When our force is actually over on the... This is when it starts to heat up, because that's when enemy Borsig, Waffenträger, comes along to try and stop the cap. We're 50% out of the way now. I'm trying to see if I can get some last-minute shots in when the enemy Borsig shows up. I'm scrambling now to get off the mountain to try and get in towards taking a shot. The enemy Waffenträger is trying to have a pot shot at him. I believe he misses. I do what I can. I fire, and the shot goes low. So you can see that it really bites you in the arse if you're not careful. And at this point, I'm just fanatically trying to get shots in on the enemy tank. So I shoot, aim for the engine, it goes where I want it to, and I set fire to the enemy T-32. It was a glorious moment, and just about survives the fire. Enemy Borsig tries to move up to try and do something. Goes YOLO, gets punished for it. Lots of health points, and the T-34 finishes him off. T-32 isn't quite hiding himself enough, so I aim, and Schütze, bang. Enemy shot, enemy tank destroyed. So a very, very frightening moment there. Our team down south actually holds the position, and at that point I'm feeling quite nervous. And then, just as that happens, the IS-6 kills the IS-3. So now we have no more heavies defending our position. I feel really sorry for the T-34. He must be shitting himself down there. So the game is getting quite tense, getting quite close, as another Borsig Waffenträger comes along, trying to get a shot, and he donks his first shot. I take my time, I shoot, bang, get a nice high damage roll to the Waffenträger. And then the IS-6 comes along, trying to fanatically rush down into the cap. T-34 gets shot in the treads, but that stops the cap. I shoot the IS-6, could have got a kill shot, but the shot goes low. I'm fanatically trying to reload, and it's one of those tense moments. Will he reload? First, I'm saying, T-34, hide, hide, T-34, hide, bang! Holy shit, that was a close call. It was so close from missing. So, the game just went crazy for a few moments there. So at this point, we've kind of put into a stalemate. He's shouting, "Help!" As enemy artillery. I'm surprised the artillery didn't take advantage of this, but I've just sent him saying, "Don't worry, I'm watching you. If enemy tanks try and push up, like I've just done with the 2 Borsigs and the IS-6 and the VK and the T-32, I'm watching him." So at this point, I'm kind of keeping my eyes peeled to seeing if anyone wants to flank, because the enemy 1375 is still alive. So's a 30, so's artillery. And if the 30... Oh, there's the scout. So T-28 prototype is there. And he's sort of saying, yo, watch out in case anyone tries to push up north. But at the moment, we're just kind of winning on a cap. So a few tense moments can come into it. I'm saying, look, guys, let's just cap. They're not going to be stupid enough. You know, we're not going to be... We have the advantage, so if we just start trying to get a cap or trying to run out and get the enemy now, it would be ridiculous. So I'm telling the T-28 to go to the cap. Trying to get to the cap. Enemy enemy 30 takes out our T-28. I'm telling the I believe at this point that the T-28 would be probably better trying to cap, because obviously the T-34-85 is at the point where he could easily be killed by either artillery or 30. And unfortunately then he starts taking fire from artillery. So I'm getting a bit frustrated, because I'm thinking the T-28 prototype is a slow vehicle, you know, and we could do... You know, I said, I'm telling the T-34, hide, don't go into cover. I know the Ferdinand and the T-28 prototype are watching, but where he was, artillery could kill him. So it's a very tense moment. You know, my heart's racing at this point. Artillery still having a go at the T-34-85. T-28 prototype is slowly pushing into the enemy cap, or into the enemy base. T-34 takes a punch shot somewhere. I'm still trying to figure out where the enemies are, really wishing someone could spot them. And it just really tense moment. And then there's the T-28 prototype. So he's rushing towards the base, trying to stop it. I'm saying, guys, fire at him, get him. I get a nice high damage roll on the T-28 prototype. T-34-85 has taken another artillery. I'm telling him, hide, get out of the cap, run, get the hell out of there. I take another shot, it tracks the T-28 prototype. Artillery then starts having a go at me. I know I'm spotted now, but I'm still determined to get this T-28. I fire, doesn't get the kill, which is ridiculous. And now I'm on 3 shells. So it's getting nerve-wracking. I'm thinking, shit, this isn't looking good. I spot the T-28, and the T-28 prototype gets the
gets the kill. So at this point, I decide, well, you know, I've stayed here long enough. Let's try and get out of this area. I'm contemplating whether I should get out and just move away from the location or not. There is still an enemy Ferdinand about. T-28 prototype on full health, making his way towards it. Artillery still having a go. So it's just one of those. It was a nerve-wracking moment. I'm still on the top. I just said T-34, just get out the cap now. You know, just don't get yourself killed. Because if at worst we'd want to get something like we'd want to get you know, if he had to go back into it, he could at least rush around and get flanking shots. But no other vehicle at the moment was fast except artillery. So very tense game, this one. Trying to make my way now towards getting another defensive position to try and see if I can help spot the Ferdinand. And there he is, enemy Ferdinand spotted. I spot him, I'm flagging him down like, there's the bastard! Because at this point it was just so freaking tense. Our artillery spot, I don't know, did our artillery get him or was it the T-28? I can't remember. Well, we were about to find out. So the enemy Ferdinand is moving up. Our Borstig Waffenträger moves up. Then the T-28 does get the kill. And then we start, then the T-34 starts moving around. And I just said, I just tell the T-34 to go to the cap. And as we've got barely 4 minutes left, I wasn't too sure with the speed of our vehicles that we could, you know, it wasn't looking like it was going to be, we had a few minutes left, but the thing is, I wasn't too sure, and I said, affirmative, I'm slow though. At this point, the T-34 decides to cap, the Gewehrpanzer is moving towards the cap, and the Borstig Waffenträger is going into the cap. So, by this point, I was realizing, we're starting to realize maybe we're not really going to be doing anything. There only is artillery in this game. And, I mean, the T-28 prototype there was having a pretty good game. But at this point, I thought, nah, I'm not going to be able to do anything to help capture that, get the artillery. So I thought, nah, I'm just going to head back to cap. Because they're going to cap, and the game will be over by then. So, I head over to the cap. On the way out, and said, I'm sorry, mate. Unfortunately, we'll cap before both of us reach artillery. But then, just as I say that, artillery then shows his face and gets himself killed by the T-28 prototype. So that very long, very tense game comes to a conclusion, and I actually get my mastery badge out of that. So this was my mastery badge game, and yeah, that was a really tense game. But as you can see, some of the shots I took there, the RNG kind of trolled me to a degree. Those two games was when the RNG was pleasant to me, most of the time at least. The last game, it was a little bit more trollish than usual, but on this game, RNG was pleasant and it was quite nice. But yeah, as you can see, the capabilities of this thing, when it works for you, is absolutely fantastic, and that's why I don't hate this thing. Anyway, I'll see you guys back in the garage. So, the Stuer Emil. While I can't say that I actually enjoyed the grind, because I really didn't. This grind was, for me, was a very testing and trying grind. And certainly is annoying that, despite having so much fun in the Nashorn, then to have to come onto this vehicle, you know, Russian bias is coming in again with this one. I'm not going to deny. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to just blame the Russian bias. I mean, hell, Russia has been having some severe nerfs of its own with some of its stuff. But certainly for this vehicle, it's not for me at least, it's not a fantastically fun vehicle to grind, you know. And it wasn't fun at all in some matches. But then at the same time, I had some pretty damn good ones. Like my Mastery badge, that was a very good match. Everything went perfectly, you know. As you saw, it was a long game, which is probably why this review is probably getting close to the hour mark. It was a long game, but it was a satisfying game, you know. Everything went right. The tank worked beautifully, and it all just slotted into place, you know. And that's what I would call the perfect game for this vehicle. But once again, you know, this vehicle for some people may be absolutely brilliant, like Rexasaur, or it may be, you know, it may be that I am, you know, you think I'm talking out my own arse, and that this thing is brilliant. But then at the same time, you may completely agree with me and state that this vehicle is absolutely shit. But I'm in the middle, you know. This thing is great, but only when RNG likes you. So, yeah, this gun trolls hard, but then you control other people hard with it. So that's going to be it for this review, guys. Hope you've enjoyed. If you like this kind of content, feel free to let me know by typing in the comment section down below, clicking on the like button, and of course subscribing to the channel. If you yourself are a World of Tanks player or a YouTube commentator and you have any useful hints and tips for me to follow, or to try and adapt and upgrade my system as well, then feel free to put them in the comment section down below as well. Thank you very much for watching, guys. This is Crap Hunter signing out, and I'll catch you next time.